Hi there BMW owners. Today in your 2016 BMW X5, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Redarc's Trailer Brake Controller. In addition to that, we're also going to be using Roadmaster's universal stoplight switch to get this installed. Blue is going to indicate that we're in the proportional mode, but there's also a user control mode available, which makes it act more similar to like a time delay module. The user control mode is mainly for when you're off-road, because if you're in some slick, muddy conditions, when you hit the brakes in your vehicle and you start to slide, the inertia sensor may not detect that you're stopping because you're still going forward, not really slowing down, so it won't even attempt to apply your trailer brakes. In user control, it is going to apply those brakes regardless because it's not working off of a proportional mechanism, so it can help you stop in those slicker conditions like that. The knob does let you adjust the output of the unit from 0 to 10, with 10 being the maximum brake output, and you can also press down on the button to activate it, just like you would the manual slide on any other brake controller. This is a great controller that's designed for trailers with 1 to 3 axles. Before you begin your installation, you want to make sure you have a fully functioning 7-way on your vehicle. If not, then you'll want to make sure that you purchase and install that. Our customer already had one installed, so we'll just be installing our unit. To assist us with installing the brake controller, we're going to be using a universal stoplight switch from Roadmaster, so that way we can get a brake signal. If you don't have a functioning 7-way at the back of your vehicle, you can use part ETBC7, which can be found here at eTrailer. This does require a fully functioning 4-way connector. If you don't have a fully functioning 4-way, you can purchase vehicle-specific wiring harnesses here at eTrailer that provide you with that 4-pole connector. You'll just want to make sure that you put your BMW X5 into the fit guide to ensure you get the correct parts. We're now on the driver's side. We're going to remove the under shield that's just above the brake pedal. To remove this little kick panel here, there are 3 bolts that run across the front. We're going to remove those with a T15 Torx socket. Once you've got all the bolts removed, you can just pull down on your panel and then pull it towards you a little bit. Now you do have some stuff connected to it here, so we want to make sure we disconnect them. We've got our light here, so make sure you disconnect that. You also have a speaker here. You want to make sure you disconnect that as well. And then over on the other side, you've got your data link connector, your OBD port. You're going to push the blue tab towards the side, and that'll allow you to pull the connector out of there. Now our whole panel will slide out, and we can set it aside to get it out of our way. Next, we're going to remove the storage compartment located here. To remove this, there are 2 bolts that we're going to remove with the T15's Torx socket. We're removing this because we're going to be installing our module for the Redarc behind it, and also because the customer had previously run their wiring that goes back from their 7-pole behind this compartment here. So if we just pull out now at the bottom, there are a couple of clips, but those will just pull off of there. So just pull those out, and then you can set this aside. We'll then also take the panel out on the side. You can push from inside the open compartment that you just removed. That'll give you a little bit of a gap, so you can then get a tool in there and just pull this out. It just pops in place. Once you've got it pulled out, you do have to pull down just a little bit to release that top part, and then we can set this aside as well. So our customer had already pre-wired the 7-way, and they had their power wire located here. This is coming from the 7-way. This is the brake output from the brake controller, and they also have a ground wire that they installed here as well. So we're only missing 1 wire to actually have a brake controller installed, and that is a brake input that lets the brake controller know when you're pressing down the brake pedal. Now our BMW does not have a switch that we can use to do so, so we're going to be using a universal switch that we're going to install on the pedal to give us that last connection that we need for our brake controller. Here's our universal switch. You can pick it up here at eTrailer. Roadmaster makes one. And this switch just uses a signal that it sends out that hits the firewall, and it looks for a return on that, and it's able to tell the distance by doing that. So when you press the pedal, the distance shortens, and then it knows now that the pedal's been depressed. Now for this to install, you can look at your switch here. The small sensor there, where it has the 2 holes here, that's the sensor that needs to face towards the firewall. So we pulled off the adhesive backing on our switch, and now we're just going to press this onto the pedal. We're going to go up high enough to where it's going to stay out of the way. We don't want it to interfere with anything. And we do want to make sure that it is pointed towards the firewall there at the front. Now on this vehicle, it does have black carpet there. The switch may or may not detect depending on how much the dark material here absorbs the signal coming from it. If that's the case, you can easily test that by putting a piece of paper in place there. If the unit works with the paper in place, then you'll have to put a target in the back here, which could easily just be a small piece of paper or something that's just a little bit more reflective of a surface. Now that we've got it stuck on there though, we're going to go ahead and zip tie it in place. So we're going to run a couple of zip ties through the open slots. Make sure that we go back down through it and then just zip it into place. We're going to do that for the other hole that's located on it there. Once you've got it clipped on there, we can install the wiring harness that it comes included with. There are connections on both the top and the bottom of the unit. You'll want to make sure you're using the one located on top. So just poke it down in there until it clicks into place. The one on the bottom is the exact same connector. They just give you a connection on each side in case you've got this flipped over and installed on the other side of the pedal. So then I just routed these wires over towards our existing wires where we can start to make our connections. They're all going to be connecting in this location. We're going to be mounting our module in this location. So I'm just going to trim them all to a relatively similar length. So now we can start making our connections. You can get butt connectors here at eTrailer, as none come included with your kit. Now if you purchase kit ETBC7, those do come with butt connectors. The stoplight switch did come with some small butt connectors, but in order to hook up to these large power wires, we're going to need larger butt connectors. You can get those here at eTrailer. We're going to go ahead and strip these back and then start making our connections. The black wire here is our power wire. The power wire is going to connect to both the red wire from our switch that we had just mounted, and it's also going to connect to the black wire that's coming off of the harness that came included with your brake controller. So we're just going to go ahead and peel that back. We'll put one butt connector on this side. We'll crimp this down. And then we're going to take our black wire and our red wire. We're going to strip the red wire. And then we'll take the black wire off of the harness from our brake controller. We're going to slide this into the other side of that butt connector. We're going to make sure we take our red wire though and wrap it around our harness first, as the wire that comes with the Redarc on that harness, it's a little bit smaller than these thicker gauge wires here, so it's easier to add these two wires together. We'll then just crimp this down. And then we're going to perform these same procedures to make the rest of our connections. The remaining wires off of our harness is the blue wire, which is the brake output that goes to the 7-way. That's going to be this wire here. Those two will connect together. Our red wire is the stoplight switch input. So this is from the vehicle. This is going to connect to the blue wire coming out of our universal switch that we installed. And then lastly, we have our ground wire, and that's going to connect to both the ground wire off of our switch and then to the ground wire on the vehicle. So I've gone ahead and finished making all the connections. Just going to throw a zip tie on it there to help keep everything together. But we can see that we've got the red wire from our harness going to the blue wire from the universal switch. If we look at the black wire, which is our power wire, we've got the black from our harness and the red from our switch going to our power wire. Next we move on to the blue wire from our harness, connects to the wire that goes to the brake output back at the 7-way connector at the back of the vehicle. And lastly, we've got our ground wire, which is the white wire on our harness. We hooked the black wire from our stoplight switch to that as well, and this just runs to ground. Now that we've got all the wiring connections made there, we have two components that we'll need to mount up. You'll need to mount up both your module, which is this guy right here, and you'll also need to mount up your switch. Now, our customer wanted his switch in a very particular location, so in order to put it in that location, since it is in the center console, it's in a very long distance from where this module is going to be located. We couldn't quite find the room where the switch was located to use the harness that came included with it, but you can get longer harnesses here at eTrailer, so we're using the upgraded 13-foot long one, so we can mount our module here in this open location and then have the switch located in a much further away but much more hidden location. So this is where our customer wanted their switch mounted. We were able to get this here. This panel here does just pop right up. If you kind of just get your fingernail under it, there you go. It does come up rather easily. So this is a harness that's similar to the one that comes included with your kit, but is significantly longer. The white connector end will plug into your switch. We mounted it in this panel here by drilling a hole with a 25/64 drill bit. And if we look on the bottom side, we did have to take a grinder bit and we had to grind out all the ribs that was in the bottom of this in order to have it a flush surface to mount our switch to. And that was necessary so that way the switch could stick through far enough that you could actually push the button. Once you've pushed the switch through, you'll just connect it with the included plastic nut. I like to turn the knob then fully counterclockwise, and when it's fully counterclockwise, take your switch and place the 0 in the position that you want to look at. We're having ours faced right up towards our switches up there, and if we turn the knob all the way the other way, we can see that it'll be 10 at the top, 0 at the top, depending on which way you've rotated the switch. The wire here, we did route over towards where we're going to be putting our module. We did have to go down, and then we came out the back here. This piece here does just kind of pull outward, the black piece along the side here, and I just poked the wire down in that and just ran it down the seam, going all the way forward. The other end of our wire from our switch, it comes out over here. You can see where I bundled up the excess back there and just zip tied it up. We're going to go ahead and plug this into our module now. The black end plugs into there. Make sure that it is fully inserted. And our module we're actually going to mount right here in this location. So we'll use the included zip ties. Make sure you keep your wires out of the way too. We don't want to pinch any of our wires while we're mounting it up. So now we've got it zip tied up here. We just ran our zip ties through the slits and then around the openings here. You do want to make sure you don't run your zip ties through any of the rectangular openings. Run it through the more oval shaped ones, because the rectangle ones will line up with the clips that hold that side panel on. And you can see here where our zip ties run around. You want to make sure it's nice and solid. You can see this isn't going to move anywhere. And you can put it in any orientation. I just chose this way because it's easy to get this large connector plugged in right here on top. So now we've got it plugged in, just double check your zip ties, make sure that it is solid. You want to make sure you have a very minimal amount of movement. It can't be moving on there. If it's just a little bit like this, see how it's like almost nothing, that's fine. You just can't have anything loose. You don't want to zip tie it to like a wiring harness or something that is going to be vibrating. That's plenty fine right there. Now that we've got everything installed, we reinstalled all the panels in reverse order of how we removed them. And now we're about going to take it out on our test course, and we're just going to do a start and stop to get the system programmed. It calibrates it so that way it knows its position, because this module can be installed in any orientation, but in order for it to work properly, it does need to know how it's positioned, so that way it's able to properly detect movement and when we're slowing down. So we're just going to go in a straight line, and we're gonna just start and stop, and it can take up to about 20 times to get it programmed. As you're doing this, you'll notice that it flashes between blue and green, and the interval that it is green and blue will get more and more blue as you program the orientation of the module. So eventually it's going to go solid blue once it's completely programmed. And the red you see is from pressing the brake. We do have a brake tester trailer simulator plugged in. Because if you don't have a trailer plugged in, you can still do this programming procedure. You just won't get any indication from the light on how far it's programmed. And now that we've completed the calibration procedure, it's solid blue, where we can now just use it like a normal brake controller. And that completes our installation of Redarc's TowPro Elite Trailer Brake Controller on our 2016 BMW X5.